Morning. I call this hearing to order. Thank you for joining us at today's Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade hearing. The Department of Energy, or DOE, is tasked with ensuring America's security and prosperity by addressing its energy, environmental, and nuclear challenges through transformative science and technology solutions. This mission extends beyond solely the work of the department to both the energy industry and the multitude of businesses that work with the DOE to fulfill this task. Small businesses are integral to the success of the DOE mission in the energy industry. However, the high cost and high technology required in the energy field often leaves small businesses struggling to compete with large corporations. The issue is of key importance to me since Iowa, the energy industry is booming. In Iowa, the energy industry is booming. My home state excels in production of renewable energy, such as ethanol and wind-based renewables. Iowa's energy production accounted for roughly 54,000 jobs and added $5 billion to the state's GOP in 2016. As a small business owner myself, I understand the challenges that small firms working in a competitive and expensive field face, and I know these small businesses can make an astounding impact on the energy if given the opportunity. Today's hearing will address the ways in which the Department of Energy is working to minimize the barriers that often exclude small businesses from succeeding in the energy field and highlight the resources the agency offers to small businesses looking to participate in the federal contracting process. We will hear from the Department of Energy's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, that's a mouthful, or OSDBU, about the various programs and opportunities the agency offers in an effort to provide small businesses with the resources they need to compete and succeed in the energy industry. I look forward to hearing from our witness today and having a productive conversation on this issue. And now I yield to the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade, Mr. Schneider, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Smith, welcome to the committee. Since the Arab oil embargo in the 1970s, U.S. energy policy has been aimed at assuring a secure supply of energy, keeping energy costs low enough to meet the needs of a growing economy, and protecting the environment while producing and consuming that energy. Technological advances, consumption changes in the modern economy, and continued interest in renewable energy have driven changes in energy investment. This investment serves as a catalyst to the federal marketplace, giving small businesses more opportunities to compete through Department of Energy solicitations to help create a cleaner, renewable future. Each year, the federal government procures more than $400,000 billion in goods and services from businesses around the country. Through the vehicle of government contracts, in order to ensure that small businesses receive their fair share of federal contracting opportunities, the Small Business Act sets forth a government-wide 23% goal of federal contracts that should be awarded to small businesses. In order to help increase the participation of small businesses in the federal procurement marketplace, offices of Small Business and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or OSDBUs, have been created throughout the federal government. It should be noted that the DOE did not meet its 10.2% prime small business goal for fiscal year 2016 and has struggled in the past to provide optimal contracting dollars to small businesses. Needless to say, a concerted effort is critical to DOE fully participating in the federal policy to engage and hire small businesses. I look forward to hearing more from Director Smith and his plans to reverse this trend permanently, given his optimistic written testimony. OSDBUs promote small business inclusion within an individual agency's mandate and also ensure that small firms are treated fairly and equitably in the contracting process. In this capacity, OSBDUs serve as one of the primary advocates for small firms and offer them information and guidance on contracting opportunities, both prime and subcontracting. Additionally, they work with small business administration and other agency officials to determine the small business goals for their agency. As evident by their unique positioning, OSBDUs enhance the ability of small businesses to compete more successfully for federal government contracts and serve a vital role in the procurement process. Within the recent growth in federal contract spending, small firms should be receiving opportunities commensurate with this increase. The DOE OSDBU goal is to provide maximum practicable opportunities in the department's acquisition to all small business concerns. It is the known policy of the DOE to provide timely information to the public regarding DOE's forecast of future prime contracting opportunities and subcontracting opportunities, which are available via the Department's major site and facilities management contractors. The OSDBU created its annual Small Business Forum and Expo to connect small businesses with various DOE offices and programs to enhance DOE's overall mission of ensuring America's security and prosperity. As an additional resource, the Energy Department runs a mentor-protege program designed to encourage DOE prime contractors to assist small disadvantaged businesses certified by the Small Business Administration. Through mentor-protege programs, small businesses are able to receive a broad array of business development assistance through various methods, including training, obtaining certificates, and in some cases, receiving loans or non-competitive subcontract awards. These benefits not only help protege firms contract with the government, but also assist them in building up their capacity. Doing so enables them to successfully compete in the marketplace at the conclusion of the mentor-protege agreement. It is vital that the DOE participate in the federal marketplace to the maximum extent practicable so that they have access to those individuals who are able to combat the dangers of climate change that are before us already. Today's hearing will provide the background and ideas needed to understand the current state of our investment in small businesses participating in the energy economy and determine whether additional investments are needed to safeguard our aging infrastructure while at the same time bolster small businesses. I again thank Director Smith for being here and look forward to gaining more insight as to how we can make Energy Department offices more effective in meeting the mission to provide small businesses with acquisition opportunities. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. If committee members have an opening statement prepared, I'd ask that they be submitted for the record. I'd like to take a moment to explain the timing lights for you. You'll have 5 minutes to deliver your testimony. The light starts out as green. When you have 1 minute remaining, the light turns to yellow. And at the end of the 5 minutes, guess what? It turns to red. And we ask that you try to adhere to that time limit. Our first and only witness today is Mr. Charlie Smith. Mr. Smith serves as the Director of the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization at the United States Department of Energy. Before his time with the DOE, Director Smith worked in various public and private sector roles, including as the Director of New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development and the Executive Director at J.P. Morgan Chase. Additionally, Director Smith served 5 years as an officer in the United States Navy, and we thank you for that service, both then and now, and for joining us today, Director Smith. The floor is yours.
Chairman Bloom, Ranking Member Schneider, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify here today on behalf of the Department of Energy on DOE's small business initiatives. I'm the Director of the Department of Energy's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, more succinctly referred to as the DOE OSDBU. I began work in this role in September 2017 and have since been working to improve the agency's small business goal achievement through collaboration with the Small Business Administration and DOE's contracting activities. The Department of Energy awards billions of dollars to small businesses annually and has met the prime and subcontracting small business goals established by the SBA since 2015. Moving forward, my focus will be to continue meeting DOE's small business prime and subcontracting goals while improving the agency's engagement and performance in the 4 established socioeconomic subcategories. My brief testimony today will touch upon 3 topics. First, an overview of the DOE Managed and Operating, M&O, business model. Second, current DOE OSDBU initiatives promoting small business engagement. And finally, examples of other DOE programs that aid small businesses. The Department of Energy Organization Act of 1977 created the Department of Energy and continued the management and operating laboratory structure created for the Manhattan Project. This business model, unique in the federal government, continues today, utilizing private sector through a network of independently managed laboratories to meet the agency's missions. DOE's unique laboratory structure created the need for a new small business goaling approach because the Small Business Administration relies on the Federal Procurement Data System, or FPDS, to assess prime small business activity. However, since M&O subcontracting accounts for 85% of agency spend, the FPDS calculations alone have historically underrepresented DOE's engagement with small businesses. To address this underrepresentation, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2014 authorized DOE to count first-tier M&O subcontracts awarded to small businesses towards its small business prime goals. These subcontracts are reported to the Small Business Administration through a data collection process named Management and Operating Subcontract Reporting Capability, or MOSRIC. For fiscal year 2017, MOSRIC combined with FPDS shows that DOE contributed over $3 billion to small businesses. The DOE OSDBU provides a broad range of resources to small businesses, such as posting an updated forecast of contracting opportunities. This posting is commonly referred to as the acquisition forecast and serves as a business development tool to help small businesses respond to agency needs. Small businesses seeking the full range of DOE needs are guided to research both the headquarters acquisition forecast and the DOE M&O contractor's additional separate acquisition forecast, which list upcoming requirements unique to their respective facilities. The Department of Energy also hosts an annual Small Business Forum and Expo where small businesses can connect with DOE buyers, receive business development counseling, exchange best practices, and be introduced to various DOE small business initiatives. This year, the three-day event will be in Houston from May 22nd through the 24th and is expected to draw over 1,000 attendees. In 2017, in an effort to improve service-disabled, veteran-owned small business subcategory performance, DOE hosted its first outreach event specifically targeted to veteran-owned small businesses and SDVOSBs. Over 200 attendees participated in a full day of training and matchmaking with DOE program elements. In fiscal year 18, DOE OSDBU is planning additional forums to specifically advocate for hub zone small businesses. These events will be held in hub zones near DOE sites and will provide businesses with business development training and matchmaking sessions to connect new businesses with DOE buyers. The department's OSDBU office also has a mentor-protege program for prime contractors to provide business development opportunities to small businesses. DOE OSDBU has a concerted effort underway to double the agency's 28 mentor-protege agreements by the end of fiscal year 19. The department's OSDBU office actively seeks to participate in other outreach events to grow our network of small business partners. In fiscal year 17, the DOE OSDBU office participated in 32 outreach events for over 10,000 total attendees, spanning all small business socioeconomic categories. Other agency small business initiatives include the Small Business Vouchers Program, which enables small businesses to tap into national laboratory intellectual and technical assets to overcome various commercialization challenges. Since March 2016, the department's Small Business Voucher Program has awarded vouchers to 114 businesses in 31 states worth a total of $22 million. DOE's Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear is another voucher program that provides vouchers to small businesses involved in the application of advanced nuclear technologies. Additionally, the agency's Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Program spurred technological innovation through DOE grants to small businesses. In fiscal year 17, the programs awarded $242 million to small businesses. In conclusion, I share and appreciate the committee's effort to ensure federal government engagement with small businesses. I welcome any questions and look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and the subcommittee to further any efforts towards that goal.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'd now like to recognize the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Comer, for 5 minutes of questioning. And before you start, I'd also like to recognize the chairman of our committee as a whole, Chairman Chabot. Thank you for being here today. Mr. Comer, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the committee. My first question, you mentioned in your testimony that 85% of department spending is done through the management and operating, or M&O, contractors to the DOE laboratories. Do the prime contracts offered to these DOE M&O contractors in any way differ from those offered directly from the agency?
Appreciate the question, Congressman. You're asking if the contracts the agency has with the M&O operators differ from our
Directly
headquarters.
from the yes.
I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that question.
Okay.
I don't know the answer. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
next question. Many small businesses are hindered by excessive regulation, obviously. What does the process look like for small businesses, or for small business to apply for an exemption to the Energy Conservation Standards Program?
It's my understanding, Congressman, that to apply for that exemption, a small business would contact the department's energy efficiency and renewable energy office, which administers those exemptions. The OSDBU office, in our mission to advocate on behalf of all small business that want to engage with the department, would be to refer any such inquiry to EERE.
Okay. In the event a small business reaches out to your office with concerns about undue restrictions on contracting competition, how does the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization advocate on behalf of the small business? What does the process look like?
I thank you for that question, Congressman. As you are likely aware, I'm sure you're aware, that's Section 15K 17 of the Small Business Act, and recent GAO audit noted that was a deficiency in an audit they conducted prior to my arrival at the agency. We've worked hard over the past few months to correct that deficiency, and now there's a process in place, and if I could briefly describe that for you, it involves we've placed on our website a mailbox that allows a small business to make a direct inquiry. That mailbox is monitored daily. Upon receiving such a notification, it's our office's job to communicate to the contracting officer or contracting officer and let them be aware of the situation and ask them for a response to the notice, and to also notify the competition advocate. We then communicate that to the small business and also communicate that there are other avenues for them to pursue that. It's a written policy. It's now in place. We have the mailbox available, and these are things that we didn't have before. And I'd just like to add, it was convenient, or at the time we instituted this at the end of last year, we received such a complaint. And I was pleased to say that the contracting officer and the competition advocate amended a request for proposal to the satisfaction of the contracting officer and the small business concern.
I have a major DOE site in my district in Paducah, Kentucky, the gaseous diffusion plant. And I get asked this question a lot. What's the DOE's definition of a small business? What classifies as a small business versus a big business?
Well, it depends. It's the Small Business Administration
Right.
that in various NAICS codes will determine which is a small business. But I'd certainly encourage any business that has that question to reach out to the office.
And I believe, Mr. Chairman, it's somewhere around 30 million. Does that sound right? 30 million in sales? Would that be? But regardless, one of the complaints that I get from my small business vendors and contractors is, once you get $1 past the minimum definition, then you're competing against multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies. So a lot of small businesses that contract with not just the DOE but the entire federal government suggest that maybe we should look at having different, a second level, because once you get past that first level, you're suddenly competing against multinational global companies that are hard to compete with if you're still between a small and a mid-sized business. So that's just one of the things that I think maybe we should look at in the committee, Mr. Chairman, in the future. But thank you for your testimony, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Comer. Ranking Member Schneider is now recognized for as long as he'd like.
Thank you, and again, Mr. Smith, thank you for your testimony this morning. I'll start my questions. The mission statement for the Department of Energy talks about protecting our security and prosperity with around energy, environment, and nuclear challenges, but concludes through transformative science and technology solutions. And small businesses at the cutting edge of innovation and entrepreneurship are often critical to that. So my first question is, you've relatively new to this position, have you found at all, could you describe the culture within DOE and how it values or emphasizes entrepreneurship and innovation?
Thank you, Congressman. And yes, I am new. I've been in the position 5.5 months. And your question was my question upon arriving there, and I will say that the department is very aware that small businesses are on the cutting edge of technology and innovation, and I would point to the SBIR, STTR programs that are prominent, premier programs in the department as an example of the agency's efforts to seek out and assist small businesses on the cutting edge of research and development.
So one of the things is, I've looked at things that to promote opportunities, the agency is required to assign small business technical advisors. My understanding is that's been a challenge. And two questions around that. The second question actually is, how are you trying to expand that and address the challenge? But given that constraint, how have the expos provided an opportunity to reach out and attract small businesses?
Thank you, Congressman. I'll address the SBTA issue. It has been a challenge, but it's been a challenge primarily because we've taken it seriously. There are a number of requirements for an SBTA, namely that I, as the OSBU director, would have supervisory authority, that the SBTA would be located in the contracting office, and that their primary responsibility would be to assist the Small Business Administration's Procurement Center representative. And General Counsel, the OSDBU office, our Office of Acquisition Management, and Human Capital have worked in concert to finally put this together. It was in December that I signed the letters of assignment to our two non-NNSA SBTAs, the two NNSA SBTAs, Small Business Technical Advisors. Mm-hmm. They had been assigned in, I believe, November, and the position descriptions for those SBTAs are being finalized this week, actually. So it has been a challenge, but I believe it's been worked out in a most thorough fashion, and I look forward to getting a review from either the SBA or GAO to confirm that for me and for the agency.
Okay, I don't want to give up on the expos, but again, I link the two pieces. In a culture that promotes and celebrates entrepreneurship, the SBTAs should be a champion of that, and hopefully a desirable position that people are seeking. But absent that, you do the annual expo. How many companies will typically come? You said over 1,000?
1,000 attendees. There are at last year's expos we had I believe 741 business representatives, I should say. Mm-hmm. Maybe less businesses than that. Might have been multiple members from a business. The others are our internal stakeholders, our program managers from the various sites. So last year the total attendance was in the neighborhood of the high 800s.
Okay, and typically, this year's Houston. Where's it been in past years?
Last year it was in Kansas City. It's been in Atlanta. I believe it was in Phoenix. One of these recent.
Right, so it moves around the country quite a bit. How do you measure the success, the outcome, the ability of these expos to generate what we want is more contracts for small businesses, more small businesses saying this is an area I want to come into, more innovation that will give us the solutions we need for our future.
We measure that to a degree. I'm not confident we measure it maybe as well as we can. We do have post Expo Forum and Expo surveys to those who participated. We do ask if they've been introduced to acquisition opportunities, but as you can imagine, a survey that comes out 6 months after a Forum and Expo may be too short a time period, that maybe there needs to be a later reconnect. But there's been an effort to some degree to determine the efficacy of the event and the utility of the event.
Great.
To date.
Well, obviously, on this committee, Small Business Committee, we all have an interest in promoting small business growth and development. As Americans, we have a profound interest in our energy future, energy security, and having that entrepreneurship, having those small companies, startup companies, find a way to develop new ideas and take those new ideas from concept to commercialization is crucial. Having access to these markets obviously is important to them. And I think if I can emphasize the point about a $30 million company, a startup's different than a $10 million company, 10 million is different than 30, 30 is different than 100. The more we can do to help these companies grow, create American jobs, the better it is, I think, for our economy and our future. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Mr. Smith, you're new to this position. I think you said 5.5 months. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Can you give me just briefly your background?
Sure. When I left the Navy after college, I spent 5 years in the Navy. From there, I went and served in New Jersey government and political positions. I was a deputy commissioner of banking and insurance. I was a director of intergovernmental affairs for Governor Christie Whitman. I most recently served in the Governor Christie's administration as a director at the Department of Labor. In between that last position, I served 13 years in the investment banking business. Small business is where it started out. For a couple years, we formed a joint venture with Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns, as we all know, was subsequently...
You were focused on small businesses then?
At that time, I was focused on actually securing business from city and county governments, most specifically in the purchase of delinquent property taxes for the investment bank. There was a lot of headline risk associated with that type of business, and consequently, J.P. Morgan shut the business down. So that was...
How big is your department right now? How many people?
11 full-time employees, including myself.
And you report to who?
I report to the deputy secretary.
Okay. And do you know how many employees are in DOE total?
We have about 105,000. I believe there's 12,000 government employees and 90,000 contracted employees.
So you have wow. Takes my breath away. You have 11 employees. Do you feel you have an effective voice? I know 5.5 months isn't a long time. I mean, are you being heard, or do they got you in an office down next to the furnace in the basement, so to speak?
No, Mr. Chairman. We're being heard, certainly. There's a strong commitment to small business because I think DOE has recognized through its M&O business model the great innovation and energy that, no pun intended, that small businesses bring to our endeavors. Our budget, our office budget is $3 million, but for 11 full-time employees, we have 90 small business program managers that, while they don't answer to me directly, we work closely with. They are all committed to expanding the engagement with small businesses. They're all extraordinarily knowledgeable in their respective areas of expertise at these labs and at these sites.
How many deputy secretaries are there in DOE?
There's one deputy secretary, sir.
And you report to that person,
Yes.
correct? Okay, thanks for giving me your background. I still have a small company, and I've owned small companies my entire business career. There are companies out there that charge, six figures to small companies to help them navigate the maze that is the federal government, and the bidding process and the approval process is beyond belief. At least it was. And this was our company, software development company, was trying to get involved in international trade. We wanted to sell more outside the United States. Now, I, as a small business owner, should spend $100,000 or more to become approved by the federal government, to be an approved vendor, to maybe get involved in a bid or a letting. To me, that's that's a barrier to entry. And very few small businesses, and I mean small businesses, less than $30 million, $50 million, are going to shell out $100,000 for a maybe. Well, why should it be that way? Why should this be so difficult? And I get it. The DOE and other agencies is like, well, you don't want to deal with a company that's here today, gone tomorrow. You have to do some checking. I understand that. But really, I should have to spend $100,000 where I could be hiring more employees, investing in my company, to navigate this. I mean, would you agree with that statement, or just comment on that, would you please? And then what are you going to do to try to make that go away for the DOE?
Well, I appreciate that concern, Chairman, and I would agree that it's not right that a company would need to spend such an extraordinary amount of money in order to do business with the federal government. I will say this, that our office, our Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization Office, and the other 24 federal offices, Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, we offer a lot of the counseling, the direction, the instruction on how to interact or best interact with the Small Business Administration. I think between the OSDBU offices and the Small Business Administration, and maybe we need to make small businesses more aware of the services we provide. But
Do the small businesses that do business with DOE or trying to do business, do they have to be approved? An approved vendor? Is there an approval process? I'm not talking about submitting a bid or trying to get a piece of the business. I'm talking about, I know on the trade side, back when we did this 10 years ago, it's like you had to be approved first, which I understand part of that. Do you have to be approved to do business with the DOE? And if you do, how lengthy is that process? How complicated is that process? How many inches of pages is that process?
Mr. Chairman, approved per se, I don't believe there's an approved. I believe there may be requirements.
Could you check that? And if you're not sure and you're new, so I'll give you a pass on that. But
be happy to
could you
check
check that and get that back to me personally?
Yes,
If you have to be approved, and what that process is.
Yes, sir. Will do.
You're not aware of it though.
I am not aware of that. I'm willing to gather that specific projects will have specific requirements necessary for businesses to compete in them. But as far as agency-wide approval, I'm not aware.
I'll reserve the balance of my time, and I'll yield to, I like to call him Coach, but we'll yield to Mr. Lawson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Smith, sometime when you come in a little tardy, you might have asked the question. So I had a question for you, and you can just tell me in your own words if you've said something about it. One provision under the Small Business Act includes the requirement to respond to notifications that solicitations unduly restrict the ability of small business to compete for contracts. And so what I was concerned about the initiatives that you have begun to help mitigate any restricted contract practices in the agency, and I think you referred to some of it a few minutes ago, but it will give you another chance to respond to it, so I'll have a little bit better knowledge.
Thank you, Congressman. I tried to describe, said earlier that GAO report had noted as a deficiency the agency's 15K17 undue restriction, facilitating those for small business concerns. I believe we've adequately addressed that. It's one of what I consider an accomplishment in my short tenure so far at the agency. But as of a couple months ago, we now have on our website a dedicated mailbox for small businesses to communicate directly with us regarding any concerns they have that a contracting opportunity may be unduly restrictive. We monitor that mailbox daily. We did receive an undue restriction notice that was submitted to us by a small business concern. We forwarded that small business concern to the contracting officer and to the competition advocate, and within 48 hours, they had amended the request for proposal, both to their satisfaction because it became a better request for proposal, and to the small business concerns satisfaction that they'd been heard and responded to in a manner that they deemed helpful.
Okay, and this is always the $10 million question. What can the Congress do to support small business and DOE in helping DOE carry out the small business contracting goal?
The most in DOE where we've been successful has been at the top line. We've been successful at hitting the overall small business prime and subcontract goals. Where we've struggled, and many agencies have struggled, has been in the socioeconomic subcategories, specifically hub zones and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. The hub zone, frustration amongst my colleagues, as I've come to realize in other agencies, has been kind of the movement of the zones, the fact that when a business becomes successful in a hub zone and people begin to receive greater compensation and move out of the hub zone, and some of the difficulties in maintaining kind of an accurate business community that we can identify with and engage with that satisfies Congress's desire to assist these underutilized businesses and our desire to engage them. I think if we could find some stability and finding a way to make that serve the purpose of the legislation, and two, maintain some stability, that would be extraordinarily helpful.
Okay, and for my time run out here, how do really DOE define small disadvantaged businesses?
Thank you, Congressman. DOE these businesses are defined for us by the Small Business Administration in the four socioeconomic categories of women-owned small businesses, service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, historically underutilized businesses, hub zones, and the 8A, the disadvantaged businesses. And those are the definitions that we use in the Department of Energy.
Mr. Chairman, if I may for 1 second, are those businesses given preferential treatment?
Could you elaborate, Congressman?
Yeah, what I mean by that, once you have them in the system, do your staff take those businesses and say, we need to kind of work with these businesses because they are now in the system that we have? Should we try to make sure that we do some contracting work with them because of the category that they are in?
The short answer to that is yes, we do. We work to advocate set-asides for those categories. In fact, there's an initiative that I intend to undertake here in the short term in the form of a simple letter to our 90 or so small business program managers to ask that their program elements pledge to set aside, do 2 set-asides for hub zones and service-disabled veterans and women, women-owned small businesses in order to retain their focus, if you will, on providing that preference.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. That's a good line of questioning. And toward that end, the subcategories that service disabled and women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. Is there a plan in place? You said, we're missing the numbers. We're hitting at the top line for small business, but we're missing the numbers in the subcategories. Is there a plan in place or not today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've established 3 priorities for fiscal year 2017, and they are in order. 1, improve socioeconomic subcategory performance. 2, make it easier for small businesses to do business with our agency. And 3, to improve our office's working relationship with our internal stakeholders, our small business program officers and our contracting officers, and directly to the plan for socioeconomic improvement. The initiatives underneath that would be the set-aside, the request for 2 set-asides in these socioeconomic subcategories to each of our program elements. An initiative where I mentioned in the testimony last year we had our first annual service-disabled veteran-owned small business day. It was specifically dedicated to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses so that we could give them a day to interact with our program elements who were there to offer them opportunities and matchmaking sessions. We're going to do with the hub zones. Our intention is to visit 3 hub zones this year. At the moment, we're looking at one near. We're seeking one near. I'm going to say it wrong. Excuse me. We're seeking one between Morgantown and Pittsburgh, where we have a lab and we have a facility.
So there is
a plan.
There is a plan for the subcategories Mr.
Yes.
Lawson was asking about. Can you provide that plan to this committee?
Yes, sir.
And it already exists, you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in the next 60 days, you can provide us that plan, and I'll distribute it to the ranking member and Mr. Lawson and the other members, as well as you're going to provide us, do companies have to be approved to even bid on business, and what's that approval process? And I was a little bit disappointed you don't know that after 5.5 months that they have to be approved and what the process is, because I think that's a real barrier to entry, having to go through that process. It is, at least what our small company had to do, it was onerous. It was unbelievable and expensive. And most companies say, no, I can't afford it. Or we don't. You have to get lawyers involved. I mean, come on. It shouldn't be, especially when we're talking about small businesses. I think you would agree.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate and agree with that, and I apologize to the committee for not having an answer for you on that.
Another question is a small business. I know there's games that can be played out there, and I've heard them throughout the years with small businesses and getting categorized certain ways by doing certain funny things. I assume a small business can't be a subsidiary of a big business. They set up this new small business, and they go, hey, we're now a small business, and we're going to go out and get a chunk of dough in addition to the other chunk of dough we're getting from the Department of Energy, because now we're a small business, but they're not really, because the ownership mirrors the ownership of the big corporation. I know you're new in the job. Are you aware of that game, and hopefully that can't be played at DOE? Do you know?
I am, yes, Mr. Chairman, I am new at the job, and yes, I am aware of that game. And I am not aware of specifically, but I do know that this concern is investigated to address specifically that type of situation you described. I'd be happy to get back to you with the particulars on how that's done.
Women-owned business, minority-owned business, service-disabled businesses. These are great goals, and I hope your plan doesn't say we're going to do these things. I hope it says here's a number we want to hit. Here's how we measure this. I'm a business guy, so far too often in government we don't measure things, and we just say, well, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And as Einstein said, if X, Y, and Z is what we did today, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z tomorrow and expect different results, that's insane. So I like to what is it today? Mr. Lawson's questions were good in that point. What is it? Where are we at today? And I hope your plan says, and here's the goal. Now, granted, you may not hit it. We get that. Nobody's perfect, but it's nice to say, here's where we're at today. Here's how we're measuring this, especially on these subcategories. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and having spent many years in the investment banking world, and I understand the need for measurement of performance. And in this initial period of my time at DOE, I'm looking for baseline numbers. So the short answer to your question is yes. But there's some research that needs to be involved to see if we are indeed moving, more businesses, the numbers as far as how much does the Forum and Expo contribute ultimately to the number of small businesses that are being engaged by the department, et cetera. But we do have initiatives in place. There are some metrics, but I'll be candid with you. There hasn't been a well enough established baseline to give definitive metrics.
Well, I'm happy to hear, and thank you for your candid answer. Candid is good. I'm happy you're from the private sector, and I think the incentives in government, and you probably would agree with this, to me, as a private sector guy, sometimes seem upside down totally. And so I think if you can bring some private sector thinking into your job, that'd be a good thing overall. And please let this committee know if you feel like you're not being paid attention to sufficiently in the department. And it's our job. I think it was Mr. Lawson asked about what can we do, as a government to help you out. It's our job to make sure they listen to you. So I'm serious. If you've got some great ideas and you feel like they're not being listened to, let us know, let me know, and we'll go to bat for you. Do any of the members have any further questions?
Good.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I just want to say there's a big push, I know since I've been here and I'm new, to really do something about getting veterans into not only into the agricultural business, but into business in general that are coming out of the military. And so that's going to be a significant push by all members, especially in our areas. And so I know that even though they are very disciplined, but there's some areas where they might fall down a little bit when you talk to the staff because they've never been into this before. They spent 4 years in the military or something of this nature. And so, but I just wanted to bring it out that there's going to probably be a lot more concern about, are we really working with our vets? Simply because, all over America, they're saying we got to do some more for our veterans.
Would you comment on that?
Well, I would like to say, Congressman, I couldn't agree with you more. I've been heartened in my short time to notice the Small Business Administration's focus, or at least attention to this very issue, and I'm confident with your eye on this. I think we'll address what I agree is an appropriate concern. I mean, as a former service member myself, I've full well knew the feeling when I left. How do I do this? You know, what do I do now? And there's extraordinary talent in that group of people. So I appreciate your concern on that.
Seeing no further questions, I'd like to thank our witness, Director Smith, for being here today. I appreciate and acknowledge, I think we all do, 5 months on the job. You're not going to have every answer. It's not easy. We appreciate your testimony, and we also appreciate the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization's continued efforts to provide small businesses in the energy sector the resources they need to compete. Hopefully, through continued efforts on behalf of the department and the OSDBU, the processes and programs in place to assist small businesses will continue to become more effective and truly allow small businesses the opportunity to grow and scale in such an important sector, very important sector of the United States economy. As chairman of the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Energy, and Trade, I look forward to continuing to work with you and the Department of Energy to achieve this goal. Now I ask the unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without objection, so ordered. We are now adjourned.